Yeah.
I'd like to call Mr. Concio a moment to take your time, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Luis Martinez. I am calling to order the February 23rd, 2016. I can't believe it's 2016 already. I feel old. Board of Directors meeting for MDX. I am honored to have here a former board member, Mr. Holland. Mr. Holland, would you do us the services of leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance today?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are we okay? Thank you for Mr. Gonzalez for the assistance on the chair. Ms. Secretary, can you do a roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Cancio?
Present.
Mr. Ferre? Mr. Gonzalez? Present. Ms. Gutierrez? Mr. Meyer?
Present.
Did you hear? Yes.
Yes, we did, Ms. Gutierrez, thank you. Good afternoon. Go ahead.
Mr. Vasquez? Mr. Walters? Ms. Weinberg? Secretary Pago? Treasurer Rodriguez-Pina?
Here.
Vice Chair Fano? Chair Martinez?
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Before we do the approval of the agenda, I am going to be modifying the agenda today. We have a resolution in honor of Mr. Holland, who's here today, as well as a plaque presentation. We will be doing that after the declaration of conflicts, but before the citizens' comment. So that will be added as D1. And so far as, do I need a motion for that? I do need a motion moved by Mr. Rodriguez-Pina, seconded by Mr. Gonzalez. Discussion is open. Hearing no discussion. Anyone in objection? Hearing none, the item passes unanimously. Excellent. So the agenda has been modified. Now I'd like a motion approving the agenda as modified. A motion for that? Seconded by Mr. Concio. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Discussion is closed. Item passes unanimously. Mr. Counsel.
Do any members of this board have to report any conflicts with an item on the agenda? Seeing none, we move forward.
Right. You want to read it? You want me to? Since I am the chair, I'm able to move this resolution. I've asked Treasurer Rodriguez-Pina to read the resolution in honor of Mr. Holland into the record, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the honor, and it truly is an honor. I consider Mr. Holland not only an esteemed colleague, but a personal friend and someone that I admire and have learned a lot from in my short time here at both professional and personal levels. So it is with great pleasure that I do this. Whereas the Miami-Dade County Expressway Authority is a body, politic, and corporate, a public instrumentality and an agency of the state established by Ordinance 94-215, adopted on December 13th, 1994, by the Board of County Commissioners of Miami-Dade County, Florida, under and pursuant to the Florida Expressway Authority Act, Part 1 of Chapter 348, Florida Statutes as amended. Whereas the members of Miami-Dade Expressway Authority Board are volunteers, whereas Mr. Robert Holland has served with honor and distinction on the board of Miami-Dade Expressway Authority since March 15, 2005, and whereas Mr. Robert Holland, Esquire, has served as Vice Chair of MDX in 2007, Chair of Operations Committee in 2007, and Chair of Policy and Planning Committee in 2013, and where during Mr. Robert Holland's tenure, MDX Board of Directors established its first all-electronic pilot project on extension of SR 836, the expressway extensions in years, a far-sighted initiative for its time, and whereas during Mr. Robert Holland's tenure, the MDX Board of Directors approved the open road tolling master plan culminating years of work to secure funding for needed transportation improvements projects by leveraging developing technology to arrive at equitable tolling. And whereas during Mr. Holland's tenure, the MDX Board of Directors guided the transformation of MDX with implementation. I'm sorry?
Sorry, I didn't, I was.
Oh, okay. Did you want to read half of this? Okay.
I didn't know who was talking, and I was looking around, I couldn't see who it was. Excuse me.
All right, no problem. There's a lot more to go, so just prepare yourself, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of accomplishments, probably a better way of saying it, in his long and extended career here. And whereas Mr. Holland's tenure doing MDX, Board of Directors approved that open road tolling planning, culminating years of secure funding for needed transportation improvement projects by leveraging developing technology and to arrive at equitable tolling. And whereas during Mr. Holland's tenure, the MDX Board of Directors guided the transformation of MDX with the implementation of open road tolling, which made the MDX system safer, fair, clean, and fast, with an outlook to the future. And whereas during Mr. Holland's tenure, the Board of Directors of MDX established their first all-electronic pilot project of the extensions of SR 836, the first expressway extension in years. And whereas during Mr. Holland's tenure, MDX Board of Directors approved the partnering with Florida Department of Transportation on the largest and most complex expressway interchange reconstruction project in history of Florida, with the SR 836, SR 826 interchange project. And where during Mr. Holland's tenure, MDX Board of Directors approved the operational strategic plan and scorecard to establish MDX strategic objectives of leadership, relationships with stakeholders, operational excellence, and stewardship of resources. And whereas during Mr. Holland's tenure, the MDX Board of Directors established a pilot program to address the needs of unemployed community by providing technical certification and assistance to facilitate employment within the transportation profession. And whereas Mr. Holland's support outreach effort to members of the Metropolitan Planning Organization as well as the state legislature with presentations of MDX plans for future prior to the implementation of open road tolling. And whereas Mr. Holland championed the inclusion of small and disadvantaged companies in the provisions of transportation infrastructure by MDX. And whereas Mr. Holland assisted in bringing to fruition some of the most challenging projects in disadvantaged and hub areas of Miami-Dade County. And whereas the Board of Directors of Miami-Dade Expressway Authority wishes to applaud Mr. Robert W. Holland on his outstanding cooperation with the county, state agencies for a better transportation system for residents and visitors alike. And whereas the Board of Directors of Miami-Dade Expressway Authority wishes to recognize the many and important contributions made by Robert W. Holland, Esquire, to Miami-Dade Expressway Authority and Miami-Dade County community. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority, Section 1, Incorporation of Recital, this resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I guess that's a motion to approve that into record.
A unanimous board second? Everyone. Excellent. Anyone want to, we have some comment if anyone wants to make any. Hearing none, I will. Robert, we met when I first joined the board 8 years ago. We sat next to each other for a pretty good portion of my first term. You, me, and Carlos Lacasa at that time was the treasurer, if you remember. We had some heated disagreements. We had some, especially with Carlos, more so than even you and I. But we had some great innovative ideas. And I learned a lot from you, and it's been a true pleasure to work with you, not only on this board, but as a person. You are a good man. And I wanted to say that this resolution was something I personally wanted to do at the same time I did Mr. Ferre's and Ms. Gutierrez's. So I'm so happy that you're here today so that we were able to do this for you. Any other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Of course, Mr. Ferre, and then Ms. Weinberg.
Yeah, I just want to say that.
Then Treasurer Rodriguez. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say that I first noticed Robert Holland when I was a county commissioner, and he was the chief of staff of another commissioner. And he was, without any question, the best chief of staff in the county building at the time. And I knew that this guy had a future. Then he was very much involved in a political campaign with Miguel Diaz de la Portilla. And if Miguel Diaz de la Portilla had followed his advice, he probably would have won that election. And then, of course, we've been here for 10 years together with Maritza. He and I have served for 10 years. And I'll tell you, a lot of the progress that MDX has made has been because of the tenacity and the strong conviction of Robert Holland in basic beliefs that he often expressed and carried the day. And MDX has and the people of Miami-Dade County will long remember him, have no way to really repay his services. I've been honored to serve with him for these 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frey. Ms. Weinberg.
Robert, I want to say thank you. A few years ago when I joined this board, I was the youngest member on the board. I think I'm still the youngest member of the board, youngest female. You really struck me as an intelligent guy. I mean, the early meetings, your comments were reserved for when you really had something to say. And then we had chance from time to time to engage outside the boardroom socially, and then I realized what a really funny guy you also are. And it's seldom that you find someone that is as intelligent as they are funny, and you have a great view on life. And it was really an honor to have served with you here. And I primarily just want to say thank you, because this is a thankless job, truly a thankless job. Nobody out there in the community ever comes up to that podium to say, thank you guys for what you do. And as I volunteer myself here on this board, I want to say thank you to you for your service for more than 10 years, and it's a real shame to see you go, and I am personally going to miss you and your work here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Definitely, I too want to say thank you, not only for your contribution to this body, to this community, but to people like me who really, you set the standard for professionalism, for articulate and thoughtful thinking. When you spoke, it was always with a certain knowledge and confidence that you didn't just speak from an emotion, and that, made me think, work harder, because you set the standards, and I wanted to thank you for that, and I know that's who you are, and I'll keep it short because I don't want to get too emotional, but I truly consider you a brother and a friend and appreciate everything you do for this community.
Mr. Cancio.
Also, I met, Mr. Holland when I was a county commissioner 13 years ago, and I met him again when he was sitting here, and I enjoyed every time that he has been talking, very smart, very eloquent, and I have been saying, if you don't want any tolls, pay the bonds, and have been great, and I want to thank you for this proclamation, because this gentleman deserves it. Thank you.
Well, it's extremely deserved. And from staff, Mr. Director?
Robert, on behalf of the staff here, those that are still with us since I started and you were appointed, and those that are fairly new to MDX, thank you for your commitment as a volunteer. But more importantly, thank you for your commitment as a friend. Thank you for sitting with us as staff and telling us to stick to our convictions, not let us waffle based on what we think people might or say or not say. Robert always challenged us, and I've expressed this multiple times. When I got hired at MDX and I went through the interview, it was the first time I did a public interview, and it was terrifying. He was on the negotiating team. He's a tough negotiator, by the way. But that's not the point. The point was that he asked me a question about small local businesses. And I gave him the DOT company line of DBEs. And I said all the right things, and Robert looked at me and said, "Are you willing to put your money where your mouth is?" And I said, "Sure." And he included the evaluation, on my evaluation, how we perform in the small and local business arena. And I never forget that, because anybody can talk. anybody can talk. So I thank you on behalf of the staff. Funny is an understatement. We had really good times, Robert, and thank you very much for being here today so we can recognize you.
Mr. Meyer, and then Mr. Vasquez.
I don't know how I follow that up, other than to say, as the youngest member of the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority Board, and only having met you, Robert, actually less than a year ago, back in March of last year when I first joined the board, I truly do appreciate all the service that you've provided to this community as a member of the board for 10 years. I can only hope that I can live up to what you've been able to provide this community, not only on this board, but also in your other service throughout the community as an example. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Vasquez.
And real quickly, I've known Robert for many years. We've interacted socially. We've interacted as in public service here on this board. And we've even co-counseled professionally on matters. And it's been a pleasure, Rob. And we all love you. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for the service that you gave this board.
And for the record, in case none of you know, Mr. Holland's a heck of a golfer as well. Robert, we have also, besides the resolution, a plaque that I wish to present to you today. And it says, the Board of Directors and staff gratefully acknowledges the contributions of Robert W. Holland, Esquire, board member, MDX board member 2005 through 2015, MDX vice chair 2007. Your exemplary commitment, leadership, and support have helped foster MDX mission and vision. Thank you for sharing your invaluable expertise, dedication, and wisdom. February 23rd, 2016, Luis V. Martinez, Chair, and Javier Vasquez, P.E., Executive Director. Vasquez. No, Rodriguez. I think Rodriguez. I know. I'm going to get something wrong. It's just about Mr. Holland, do you have anything to say before we conclude with our closed discussion on this item?
I want to say that I might have qualified as the youngest board member when I walked in here with my dyed beard. But the resolution was so long that I think I'm turning gray again. Again, I want to thank all of you all for having had the opportunity to serve with you. You know, I've oftentimes said that this is by far the best board that I've ever served on. And it's a very humbling experience to have the opportunity to serve on this board and to appreciate all that you do. And I know I sometimes get in my emotions when I think about the amount of things that we've done and we still get criticized for all of those efforts when they far exceed anything anybody else has done. And so I want you to know how much I appreciate having served on here and how much I appreciate what it is that you do and how much more you still have to do, and recognize that you still won't get thanked for it and there still won't be any appreciation for it. And for many of the vendors that we've dealt with, the staff, to me it has been a fabulous ride. My wife appreciates the fact that I'm not on here, I have to be honest, because now I'm not conflicted, I don't work anymore, I can get some work. But I want to tell you, I'm very, very proud of having served with so many of you on here, and even some of the past members that are not here today. Keep doing a good job, and I can tell you here unequivocally, if there's anything that I can do, even if you feel like you can't say it and you need somebody who can say it, call me, I'll say it. I don't have to be politically correct anymore, so call me and I will say it, because I know what a fine job you're doing. Again, thank you for allowing me to have worked with you and served with you. Thank you.
Following Robert's rules, discussion is now closed. All in favor of the resolution passing, please say aye. Aye. Now we can do a presentation of the plaque. Absolutely.
Recognize you. I said, is that Robert's son?
He's working out. One, two, three, and one more. One, two, three.
Hey, stay off my Facebook comments about politics here. Stay off my Facebook comments. Sounds good.
Thank you all, too.
Okay. I believe we are now at citizens' comments. Is that correct, Council?
That is correct.
For clarification, and I'd like to put this on the record, our policy requires that citizen comments only deal with issues on the agenda. That is the rules and regulations that we could follow if I so choose. However, I'm an incredibly strong advocate of the First Amendment. I believe to get community participation in such meetings, it is essential to allow any citizens that come, whether the matter is before the board at that time or not, the opportunity to speak to us. And particularly since my parents came from a country where free speech does not exist. So because of that, I'm going to allow all public citizen comments today and every day, provided that they adhere to the 3-minute rule that is required. And I caution the board, one of the issues that is going to be brought before this in the citizen comments relates to some pending litigation that is currently set for a hearing in March. Obviously, I have no way of telling people what to or not say, but understand that anything you say may be used in one way or another in the litigation that is currently pending. So please govern yourselves accordingly and make a decision if you wish to make any comments. That being said, I don't see our secretary here, so we need someone to keep track of the 3 minutes. Mr., can you keep track of that? Very good. Now, knowing that we have 3 minutes for citizen comments, how many individuals wish to speak to the board right now? Mr. Rose, I see you're here as well. If it's acceptable, I'd like to we'll let Mr. Rose speak first, and then we'll let the members of MCM speak afterwards. If that's acceptable to you, Mr. Rose.
They can go first, that's fine.
You sure? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Then I'll let you guys go. Got 3 minutes. And please indicate your name and from where you're from. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Pedro Munilla, 7277 Sunset Drive. First of all, I would be remiss if I didn't respond to Ms. Weinberg's comment that this is a thankless job. I can tell you, on behalf of the many contractors, subcontractors, consultants, and tremendous transient transportation that live and use your roads, MDX roads every day, we thank you very much. This is an outstanding board, and it provides a lot of work and it provides a lot of transportation, facilitates a lot of transportation. Thank you.
For those comments, Mr. Go ahead.
I'm here to address your award of the 87th Avenue project to order break at the last meeting. As a brief reminder, that was the project where MCM was the highest ranked and lowest adjusted price by close to $3 million, with the completion of the project 7.5 months earlier than order break. At your last board meeting, you voted to award the project to order break because you were advised that MCM's bid was not responsive for failure to meet certain pre-qualifications. You will recall I complained that contrary to MDX prior practice, and MCM was not provided an opportunity to clarify its submission, and most especially that MCM was given a mere 1 day's notice to prepare prior to the Operations Committee meeting before being told it was found not responsive. I remind you as well that at the prior meeting, MCM had gone to the court, prior to the prior meeting, MCM had gone to the court to enjoin the award to Odebrecht, and that the court had entered an order that this board would not prejudice MCM's rights pending the court's hearing on the matter. After your award, that court entered another order that the contract shall not be executed in favor of Odebrecht until its determination, for which a hearing has been scheduled for March 28th. Based on the above, I am here today requesting that pursuant to Robert's rules, one of the members of this board move to reconsider the previous vote pending the outcome of the court's determination on whether MCM was a responsive bidder. You lose absolutely nothing by withdrawing the award. Moreover, you most respectfully, you will gain the court's favor since it had previously issued an order that you could not prejudice MCM's rights, and you nonetheless awarded the contract to Odebrecht. We make this request so that in the event the court rules that MCM submitted a responsive bid, Odebrecht will not have an argument that the contract has already been awarded to it and leading to additional litigation and delays. Again, my request is that before the adjournment of this board meeting, one of you honorable members make a motion to recall the vote at the last board meeting and change the motion to hold off making an award until the court makes a determination on MCM's responsive. You will next hear from our general counsel.
Time.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Daniel Munilla, 5400 Southwest 82nd Avenue. As my dad mentioned, we respectfully request that you withdraw your January 26th award to Odebrecht pending the determination of the court, whose hearing is scheduled for March 28th. Moreover, we respectfully request you undertake a responsibility review as permitted under sections 20.2 and 23.2 of the RFP, where an MDX reserved the right prior to execution of a contract to conduct investigations to establish the responsibility, qualifications, and financial abilities of bidders to MDX's satisfaction. My letter, which you have in front of you, attaches multiple articles from the Wall Street Journal, Reuters, BN Americas, the New York Times, the Associated Press, among others, regarding the state of Odebrecht. They show, among other things, Marcelo Odebrecht, Odebrecht's president and CEO, was charged with money laundering, corruption, organized crime, and was arrested in June 19, 2015, and to this date remains in jail. Odebrecht has been barred from public contracting in its home country of Brazil. Odebrecht has suspended work in Venezuela due to overdue federal government payments. A Brazilian judge sentenced the former head of a state-run oil company to the maximum sentence of 4 years in jail for his role in corrupting a 2010 contract bidding process to favor conglomerate Odebrecht SA. Odebrecht may find it increasingly difficult to acquire financing it needs to successfully bid on projects, and Odebrecht is being investigated in various other countries. Look, last year this board awarded Odebrecht MDX's single largest project ever, and this year it awarded Odebrecht its largest project so far this year. You need to know the standing of that company you're dealing with. As such, we believe it is incumbent upon this board to investigate and make its own determination on Odebrecht's responsibility prior to executing the next contract. You may hear from Odebrecht that there's no relationship between the companies, but that couldn't be further from the truth. There's absolutely no doubt that Odebrecht Construction, Inc. is 100% owned by Odebrecht SA. If you look at Exhibit B in my letter, you can see the connection. Odebrecht's very own website attaches its annual report, which indicates that Marcelo Odebrecht was Odebrecht Construction, Inc.'s president and CEO when this bid was submitted. I would also like to point out that upon information and belief, Odebrecht Construction, Inc. is presently unable to bid projects of substantial nature in the U.S. like 395. Considering the foregoing, we respectfully request that MDX review the attached, my letter, conduct an investigation and satisfy the concerns raised therein, and determine whether Odebrecht is a responsible contractor. Withdraw the award to Odebrecht pending its investigation and the court's ruling. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Wells? Sorry, can you hear me now, Mr. Wells? Yeah. Happy New Year. Mr. Wills, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Chris Wills. My address is 11165 Southwest 75 Terrace. I want to begin by thanking those members of the board who have stood with the community, especially Mr. Jose Pepe Cancio, for your service here on this board. I am coming before you also to provide you all an update. Since I last spoke with you all, and I was at your last meeting, but chose not to come up because it looked like you all had your hands full. The last time that I was here, since then, we've secured the signatures on our petition of 4 Miami-Dade County Commissioners. Those would include Commissioner Xavier Suarez, Commissioner Esteban Bovo, Commissioner Rebecca Sosa, and Commissioner Audrey Edmondson. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll be announcing the support of many other elected officials, not just here in Miami-Dade County, but across the state. And I would once again invite you all to consider signing our petition, which would simply again give the voters of the state of Florida the power to approve tolls and toll increases in the community within which those tolls are going to be imposed. I want to wrap up by addressing something that I believe in the last meeting, Mr. Chair, you said was going to be on this agenda, which is the issue of the cashback toll dividend program and where it stands right now. As I understand, next month, March 31st, the deadline to register will expire, and I am asking this board to consider extending that deadline if, in fact, you are not going to do what the community and even our mayor, Mayor Jimenez, have asked you to do, which is to simply roll back the toll. The rollback tolls, people have also echoed this, where basically it would be a much fairer way to ease the burden on families and hardworking small businesses in our community. But in lieu of rolling back the toll, if this toll dividend program, which, as I said the last time I was before you, the numbers prove only 4% of this community, 4% of the people that drive MDX roads received anything through that toll dividend program in 2015. If in fact it's going to be a little more successful this year, we would call on the board to have year-round enrollment. There's no reason to not have year-round enrollment. And I understand the practicality that the $2 million that was being disbursed, if it was divided between the $1 million that you all say drive your roads every single year on your website, that's $2 per person. So I understand that limiting the registration may give you guys better coverage in the media, but it's not the fair thing, it's not the right thing.
Tommy.
If you believe in the program, please extend the deadline. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any other public comments? Hearing none, public comments are closed. Yes, Mr. Gonzalez. Sure.
In regards to some very serious things. So I have some questions. Number one, do we have a responsibility review in place under our process as they claim, or we don't, or how is that handled?
Counsel?
Yes. The Odebrecht USA was searched through 12 different websites, and they're not debarred from anything. And one thing I want to make clear, that's Odebrecht SA, and they have not, I'm not an expert in Brazilian law, I don't know, but they're not, the gentlemen that are in jail right now have not been convicted of anything. They're accused of anything. In the United States, you would have bail or they'd be held penalty. That's not a conviction. That's just an allegation.
And when they claim that Odebrecht Construction, Inc. is not able to bond work, I mean, I suspect they have to bond our project, so
Yes, they do.
I'm
Of course they
asking
do.
the question.
And they have.
And they have.
Yes.
And they're also ahead of schedule on the 836 project.
Right. And in terms of the last claim they make, in terms, we have a litigation ongoing, the judge ruled on something. I take it that he ruled on an injunctive action of some type, and
No, he did not rule on anything.
The
I'm
judge,
asking for an explanation of
Sure,
what
of
they
course.
ruled on.
the judge didn't rule on anything. We agreed to an order to have the hearing on March 28th. That's what's set. They filed a declaratory and injunctive relief. It's going to be heard on March 28th.
And I guess procedurally, whatever that judgment of the court is, we can act based on that.
Sure.
No matter what we do.
No matter what we do, we already did.
Well, they're
We
asking
did
us-
last month.
They're asking us to withhold or withdraw or consider withdrawing an award. So I'm saying, if you don't do that and the court comes down on a judgment, what is our flexibility at that point?
If the court comes down on judgment for who?
For MCM, for example, if they
Well,
say.
then, that's, I think that's separate from ours. I think that what we did, or what the board did, now, I want to be clear, the board awarded the contract to Odebrecht, okay? The ops committee deemed them non-responsive, okay? So if we would do that by our own, pardon me?
Sorry, deemed who non-responsive?
MCM. The ops committee.
Yeah, but you didn't say that. You said, okay.
What did I say?
We got it.
Got it.
Okay. By the terms of our ITB award, it must go to the number one ranked proposer. Rescinding that award from the number one proposer without some basis is likely to be held as arbitrary and capricious act, and it would deviate from MDX's policy to award the number one ranked proposer and subject the agent to further litigation.
All right.
And according to our, and we're following our policy, and our policy, I think it's 7.5, says that we do not have to stop a procurement for somebody who files a bid protest.
Any other questions? Okay. Moving on. The approval of the summary minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to review them?
Second.
By Mr. Rask, seconded by Mr. Meyer. Any discussion? Hearing none, discussion is closed. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Executive Director's Report.
Yeah, three things, Mr. Chairman, that I want to point you towards. In your folders, we committed to doing a calendar of events for the month. You'll be getting this regularly. The first one is in there. It states all of the meetings that MDX will be appearing at, participating at, county commission, chambers, you name it, they're there, including our meetings here. So we will continuously update the calendar as we get more information and be sending it to the board members on a regular basis. Please take a look at it. If you'd like us to add anything, let me or the board secretary know. The second thing is I do want to thank all of the board members for participating in the workshop prior to this meeting. It is a difficult, complex process. I do try to update the board every board meeting on who we're briefing and how it's progressing. There's a lot of empirical data that had to be run. We did meet with the director of the MPO. We did meet with the director of transit. We did present at the MPO subcommittees for transit solutions and financial solutions. We have met with Mayor Jimenez and his staff as far as what we're planning. Our goal, my goal, the authority's goal is that this plan is not just a piece of paper, that it's something that actually works into a much greater plan for this community and moves transportation. So I hear you. I guess the next three steps is we're going to set up the one-on-one meetings. We will come to you if necessary. We'll schedule the workshop. Please look at the week of April 4th so that we can schedule sufficient time to have the workshop and answer everyone's questions in a group setting in a sunshine-type meeting. And the goal would be that an approval of that strategic master plan occur at the April 26th board meeting. If I'm mistaken, please correct me, but I figured that it was important for those here or weren't here for the whole meeting. The third thing I do want to update you on is on the cashback toll dividends program. As the board knows, as of January 11th, we opened the registrations again. As of today, 10,664 new members have signed up. We've also had over 3,300 people go into the website and update their information because they've moved or information changed. So the grand total, if you add last year's and this year's, we're up to 95,000 members. And I think for the record, I need to clarify something as far as there's 1 million cars that use our highways. Those are trips. There's about 300,000+ unique account holders with SunPass that we've identified on the MDX system. So this cashback toll dividends program that we've had, getting up to closely 95,000, is capturing about a third of those unique account holders that use the MDX system. Because remember, as a driver, as a SunPass holder, I can take 4 or 5 trips in one day, but I'm only one account holder. So we feel that it's a very successful, and it'll be open till the end of the month. And we've encouraged, and I've encouraged commissioners that we've been meeting with, state representatives and senators that we've met with, to let their community know, and they have.
May I ask a question to the executive director? Do last year's participants automatically renew?
They get an email, and they have to click a button. If there's any information that needs to be updated, remember, when we created this, it wasn't just about giving money back, but about getting a relationship with the customer and being able to interact with the customer. So getting that information and keeping that information is very important, and keeping it up to date is very important.
Questions?
That concludes my report.
Any other questions for the director? I actually do, Mr. Director. Mr. Wills made a comment of 2 of them. Number 1, about just rolling back the tolls. We did if I recall, staff did the calculations about the overage cashback we had if we rolled all the gantries back. Approximately how much was that going to be?
If we were to roll back the tolls, it would have been a third of a penny.
In comparison to the 30% we were able to give back to those who registered, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, small businesses were tremendous beneficiaries who had registered their vehicles, correct?
Correct.
If I recall, one of the small businesses that I personally went to and returned their funds to received a cashback dividend of close to over $1,700 for the 60 SunPasses they had involved. I would consider that a little more significant than a third of a cent.
Yeah.
And the other issue that Mr. Wills discussed is keeping it open for the entire year. If I recall, part of the difficulty for that is based upon our budgetary constraints, correct? Could you give a little description of that as well?
The reason we're closing it at the end of March is because we have to prepare a budget. And the way we did the cashback dividend is after we meet all of the obligations of the authority, financial obligations. Remember, we don't have any backstop from the state or the county or from any tax revenues. So we can only make do with the revenues we collect. It's all pledged back to the system. It's all pledged to pay our debt. It's all pledged to the needs of the facilities. For us to declare a $2.2 million dividend this past year, we had to express clearly that there was no use for that $2.2 million. We have to go through that process every year before we declare what is excess. That's why there has to be a cutoff date so we know how many people we're dealing with, and we can recommend to the board what that cashback percentage would be and the dollar amount that it would be for each.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board based upon what I just asked?
By the way, the budgeting process is in April. The budget gets adopted at the beginning of May.
And that's why
where the deadlines
And that's why we
come in.
picked the 31st of March. Any other questions from the board based on my questions? Hearing none, thank you for that very concise report. May the record reflect that Ms. Gutierrez has joined the board meeting. Good evening, Ms. Gutierrez. Good to see you. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon, good evening, good afternoon. Ms. Gutierrez is expecting to become a grandmother. Grandmother. I said grandmother. Grandmother in the very near future. Very exciting news for all of us. I was going to get there, I just couldn't be heard. MPO representative.
Board members that are very concerned with their age, because the youngest board member, and then the other one comes in and saying, I'm the youngest board member. And I felt like telling them, well, I'm one of the seasons board member, along with Mayor Ferre.
At least Mr. Treasurer is no longer saying I'm the new kid on the block. That's, we had that for a while. MPO representative report, good.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. I'm sorry, Councilor, I apologize. General Counsel report.
Before I give a report, I would like to ask Ms. Gutierrez, does she have any conflicts with any items on the agenda?
No, just with the traffic that's out there.
All right. I have I have 3 items to report quickly. ETC litigation, I spoke with Mr. Sirota, our outside counsel, around noon today regarding the decision. Nothing has, he has not received a decision, or he has heard any word on when it's going to be done. MCM Bid protest 1 litigation or oral arguments on MCM's appeal of our director verdict is scheduled for next Monday, February 29th. And then, as they reported, MCM 2 bid protest, a hearing has been set for March 28th.
Any questions to the general counsel report? Hearing none. MPO representative report.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Frey.
things are moving smoothly at MPO with the new executive director, Eileen Bouclé. The chair and the board have created 3 committees. Those committees are finance, projects, and governance, and Mr. Rodriguez and the MDX staff have been active in all of them and are present and are keeping the flow of information to MPO about MDX issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Frey? Hearing none. Treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everything's online and on target to our projections from the previous month. Let me let Marie speak a little bit to that, but everything is consistent with our projections. We're not off in any of our, we have not deviated from any of our projections, and we seem to be operating in a consistent and sustainable manner. But Marie, if you want to add a couple of comments.
Certainly, I'll keep it brief. For the 7-month period, January 2016 or fiscal year 16, our revenue was $131.5 million. Some positive aspects of our revenue. Overall traffic is 4% above what we forecasted, so that's very positive. We've collected over $4 million in fees. Our collection on toll by plate is up as well. We're up to date on our toll by plate billing, so a lot of positive aspects on the revenue side. On the expense side, for the 7-month period is $76.2 million, a little bit less than 1% below the budget. Nothing that's out of ordinary on the expense side, so overall we're tracking exactly to what we need to achieve.
Thank you. Any questions to the treasurer or staff? Hearing none. Mr. Director, the committee reports are part of the general agenda, I believe. So we'll move forward. The consent agenda, council, please.
Consent agenda A, March 13th to the 15th, 2016, trip to Washington, D.C. by Executive Director Rodriguez to attend the IBTTA Summit on Transportation Finance, Road Usage Charges, and Policy Conference.
Anybody have anyone want to move by Ms. Gutierrez, seconded by Ms. Treasurer Rodriguez Pena? Discussion open. Any discussion? Hearing none. Anybody in opposition? Hearing no one in opposition, the item passes unanimously as a consent agenda. The regular agenda, please, council.
Okay. Item A, MDX procurement contract number MDX 13-06, MDX work program number, various toll collection system, equipment installation, maintenance, and support services, $4,306,984.57. Endorsed by the Operations Committee on February 18, 2016. Approval of Amendment Number 2 to the Cooperative Purchasing Agreement with TransCore.
Anyone wish to move the item? Moved by Mr. Vasquez, seconded by Ms. Gutierrez. The item is now open for discussion. I believe, Steve, you're going to be presenting on behalf of staff?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
You please.
Board members, as stated, this item was endorsed by the Operations Committee in January 18th. There are 3 components to this. The first one is the closeout of the installation of open road tolling on 836. This was from a cooperative purchase agreement. The contract had a a la carte list of pricing for lanes, and now we're finalizing it, and this is the final total. The second component is the uniform financial message that is required for the interoperability component. And then finally, the cashback toll dividend program components for the reports and audit. We're asking $281,000.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing no questions, discussion is closed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, item passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the thorough discussion at operations, Madam Chair. Last Thursday, it cleared up for the record a lot of questions that people had on this particular item. Thank you.
Thank you, operations. Next item, please, council.
Yes. Item B, MDX procurement contract number RFQ 12-02, MDX work program 10019.050, construction and engineering and inspection services for system-wide implementation of dynamic signs, $125,777.75, endorsed by the Operations Committee on February 18, 2016. Approval of Amendment Number 2 to the contract with AECom.
Who wishes to move the item? Moved by Ms. Gutierrez, seconded by Mr. Cancio. Item's open for discussion. I believe, Mr. Rodriguez, you're going to be presenting?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Board members, as was stated in the introduction, this is the second amendment to contract with AECom. As is stated in the agenda item report, the design-build contractor has been World Fiber Technologies is late on their submittal of the project. We have assessed liquidated damages. This is to cover the CEI cost for the additional time. We will be recouping it from the liquidated damages, so it's an offset.
Any questions of Mr. Rodriguez? Hearing no questions, discussion is closed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Yes. He's not voting. You have a conflict? That's fine. Then he did not vote. Anyone else? Conflict enough? Nope. I'll pass unanimous, and Mr. Gonzalez did not vote. Thank you. Next item, right? Next item, Council, please.
Yeah. Item C, MDX procurement contract number RFQ 15-07, MDX work program number 83629.051, construction and engineering inspection services for State Road 836, interchange modification at 87th Avenue. Endorsed by the Operations Committee on February 18, 2016. Approval of the negotiated agreement with A Square Group, Inc. in the amount of $8,298,076.98.
Anyone wish to move the item? Mr. Cancio moved, seconded by Mr. Meyer. Now it's open for discussion. Mr. Rodriguez, I believe you're going to present for
Yes,
staff?
as we presented in Operations Committee, this is the negotiated agreement with A Squared Group, Inc., who was the successful proposer for CE&I of this interchange project. The request also includes an increase in our budgeted amount, which we will be releasing from contingency, an amount of $2.508535.63. When we estimated this contract, we estimated it based on our baseline schedule. Given that we know who was the responsive bidder, Odebrecht Construction, Inc., we negotiated. Based on that negotiation, we're going to need additional staffing to provide verification of work and compliance with the contract documents. This contract reflects that accelerated schedule.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Rodriguez? Ms. Gutierrez, this was thoroughly vetted in operations, is that correct? Thank you. Excellent. Any other questions? Discussion is closed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, item passes unanimously. Final item on the regular agenda, Council, please.
Okay, that's item D, centralized customer service system master agreement, conditionally endorsed, subject to providing the board with a cost-benefit analysis on February 18th, 2016. Approval of agreement in substantial form.
By Ms. Gutierrez, seconded by Mr. Vasquez. It's open for discussion. Mr. Rodriguez.
Board members, as we discussed on Thursday at the Operations Committee, at that time, the contract was in substantial form. We did not have a lot of the data to plug into the formulas which were presented on Thursday. I think wisely the board asked us to get that data, which we did that evening, plug it in, and do a comparison of what the cost to MDX are for toll operations in the current fiscal year versus what it would be if we had the CCSS master agreement in place. We distributed that analysis on Friday. It's before you, the substantial, and that's just a financial analysis. I think the total savings are in excess of $9.5 million on an annual basis. But besides that, there are benefits to the authority, and it goes to customer service. The reason we got into a centralized back office is because the customers too many times were being directed from one agency to another because I don't own SunPass, I'm not Turnpike, I'm MDX, OCA, at the time now CFX, Tampa Hillsborough. The goal here was to get a one-stop shop for the customers where they can go and resolve any issues of tolls in the state of Florida. There's an added benefit to having a customer service center, and that's national interoperability, regional interoperability. Because you can drive on our facilities with a North Carolina tag or vice versa, we're processing all those toll transactions in Florida. So if you're a visitor from another part of the country that is interoperable with Florida, you can also call or visit one of our customer service centers and get all your issues resolved. We are in the process of working with the Florida Turnpike currently on the development of the back office, and this is the master agreement that's in place, and it discusses it. It discusses the particulars of it.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, and then Mr. Foray.
Thank you. As you know, at the Operations Committee, I had some reservations about this item in part, and rightly so. I think my added responsibility as treasurer, I take it very serious, and I felt uncomfortable supporting this item until we had additional information. I think we now have the information we needed. I have sat with staff and gone over the numbers, and from just a pragmatic business perspective, I could tell you that it makes total business sense, and that's my opinion, professional opinion, but also my responsibility as a treasurer, looking out for the financials of this organization. I feel that it's a sound investment. So I wanted to let the rest of my board members know that I've taken the time, and that after meeting with Marie and Javier, have discussed it, and I think the numbers speak for themselves. So now that we have the numbers, we can make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez-Pinho. Mr. Foray.
Mr. Chairman, besides the good business sense and the $9.5 million a year, this is good relations with the state of Florida. I can tell you that Secretary Boxhold and all the people in Tallahassee at FDOT are very pleased with MDX, and especially with Javier Rodriguez for his invaluable help in getting this project underway. So to Ms. Cassetti and the others that have been involved, and the people in Tampa, but especially to Javier Rodriguez, I think there's a recognition all over the state for his leadership, and I just want to put that on the record. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Ms. Gutierrez.
Like I had said in operations, that we needed to see this because then we would realize the importance of this agreement, and that's exactly what we have today. This is a customer service positive move where it becomes seamless. So when you look at it, you realize we should have been doing this all along.
Right.
This is where we should have been since the very beginning. But it's a good thing. It's never too late to do the right thing, and now is the time to move on it and proceed. It's very good.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, discussion is closed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Mr. Fellow board members, we have informational items. If you have any questions, you can discuss those with staff. Anything further? Hearing nothing further. I have now chair's comments. Mr. Rodriguez, you said 94,000. Is that correct?
1,000 so far, yes.
94,000 individuals of our community have now applied for our cashback program. Just think about that number. 94,000. That is the efforts of our staff and the efforts of this board to emphasize this. Since the last time we met, we had days that we were ably represented there by Mr. Bernie Escobar, Board Treasurer Rodriguez-Pina, Board Member Meyer, and Board Member Weinberg, who represented this board and this agency with honor and incredible class while we were up in Tallahassee, speaking to respective representatives at both the state, at both the House and senatorial level, standing in behalf of our board. One of the things that I think needs to be emphasized more and more every day, and it was very strongly emphasized in one meeting by several members, is that we are all volunteers. We don't, because of the conflict rules, we don't make any money off of this. We do this because we have a sense of community. And sometimes doing the right thing is unpopular. And one of the things I've taken great pride in working with not only staff, but with this board, and with the board members in the past as well, is how serious we take our responsibilities. We may not always agree. We may not always see eye to eye, but we have always tried to learn from each other and work together, and I take great appreciation to that. On a sadder note, Mr. Cancio, I know today you tendered to me your letter of resignation that you have forwarded to the board, effective tomorrow. I wanted to give you the opportunity, I wanted to tell you from my personal perspective that although it's been a very brief period that we have worked together, it has been truly a pleasure. You'll bring a perspective that I really appreciated from a different view of Miami-Dade that I had, since you've been here your whole life, and I have always, not necessarily always agreed with you, but I've always appreciated your input, and I believe that you always have tried to speak from the heart. For the record, I think you can acknowledge I tried vigorously to talk you out of resigning today because I believe you are a valuable member of this board, but I honor your desire to do so, and I respect your decision. I just wanted to personally on the record say that I have truly enjoyed working with you. And of course, Mr. Cancio.
We'd like to thank you, the staff, the board members, for my 340 days here in this board. I never miss a meeting. I never miss a committee. But, in the way that, the Tallahassee plays, the SB 299 and the SB 574, that means that in the future, the board going to be from 13 person to 9. I don't want that the governor, that they have too much work to be picking and choose the people who have to take down. That's why, I am volunteering. I am getting out of the board with a great respect for everyone. I have been learning a lot about MDX. As I have been saying from the first day, we need to advertise more what the MDX do, because sometimes the people, complain there, they have been raising the tolls. But, sometimes I have been a dissent vote, but, that is the way that Jose Pepe Cancio have been doing for 76 years. I don't do, my way on the highway. Thank you. Bye.
And Mr. Cancio, I will tell you categorically from my perspective, I think I speak for all of us, I have no problem with somebody being a dissenting voice. It's actually very refreshing, and it's a good way to talk ideas out. You've always been very respectful in your concerns, and I've always appreciated that very much. Yes, Mr. Vasquez.
Comment on the heel of Mr. Cancio's comments about the legislation. My understanding is that it has cleared both houses, and it's now pending becoming final law, correct?
Yes, it cleared both houses.
So I have one question, because I went out of my way to ask staff to get the policy background about the legislation. I have yet to see, and again, this is just for conversation. If anybody knows of something out there, please let me know. I have yet to see any policy discussion as it relates to that one part of the bill that takes our board from 13 members to 9. Is there anything out there? Because I must be missing it.
No, quite frankly, there isn't any. This is, I'm not going to get into a policy debate about this, but I would welcome Representative Nunez at any time to discuss what the policy or Senator Flores' policy issues are. We can debate those at any time. I'm not here to cast any aspersions on anyone, but nonetheless, that I'm aware of, there's no policy issues. But nonetheless, we were created by the county and by the state legislature. If they chose to reduce us to 3, there's very little we can do about it, and we are volunteers.
And I'm not asking the question facetiously.
No.
I'm asking the question because, and along the lines of Mr. Cancio's comments, we heard from Mr. Holland, and we have very quality people on this board.
We absolutely do.
And we none of us are paid. We sacrifice a lot, but this board takes on very significant decisions for our community. And all of a sudden, I see obviously these arbitrary decisions being made that affect the ability of some of us to be either continue serving or to be reappointed. And I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but it's shameful. And I wanted to just go on the record asking if there's any policy that substantiates that change, and if not, then...
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
I don't believe to this point we've had an explanation of policy, but that's neither here nor there. Yes, Mr. Frey.
Yeah, I think it's important because I think it's important not to have any confusion on this thing. This matter was discussed by one of the committees of MDX. our representative in Tallahassee, Fausto Gomez, was present at all of those meetings. He did not speak against it because he was not instructed to speak against it. So he kept silent. So in other words, it isn't that we weren't notified. It isn't that we did not understand what was going on. It's just that the committee decided not to speak on it, and I think it's important to note that.
That's not quite true,
Well,
Mr. Ferrer,
tell
because
me exactly.
this legislation has been up in Tallahassee for over 3 years now.
Correct.
And it has been, through the efforts of staff and others, basically put on hold for the last 3 years.
That's correct.
So it hasn't been like, there hasn't been an effort diligently to try to deal with this. There was an effort made, and ultimately, those who were in favor of reducing the board won out. But it wasn't for lack of effort on our part to
I
try to
understand.
stop.
I didn't say that.
No, but just to
Well,
clarify.
no, I didn't say that.
It's been out there for 3 years.
But it's important that it be clear that I did not say that. What I said was that it was discussed in committee, and there was no action taken by committee.
No, there wasn't. Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Rodriguez-Pino.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. You know, I have a lot of knowledge and background in the state policymaking process as I began my career during college in the legislative process. So I have extensive knowledge. I have great respect for the body of both the House and the Senate and the bicameral process and how bills and ideas become laws. So I have great respect, and I have great respect for the individuals to serve, as leaders of our community. But from a policymaking perspective, as a volunteer who has served on many boards in this community, oversight is oversight. The more oversight you have, the better the final product will be. In this case, you have 13 people. That's 13 brains that can input. You have people that can bring their unique perspectives. The more, the broader. One can argue that greater participation with different perspective of 13 versus 9. So, while I respect the legislative process, I'm perplexed, befuddled, because I don't get the policy, right? The policy background and the decision-making for going to 9. Ultimately, it's a will of the legislature. That's why we elected them there. And I think what it will ultimately do is empower staff. And I think that the lack of oversight of additional 4 people may provide less oversight and empower staff more. Thank God we have wonderful staff today. And I'm very grateful to be part of this organization because of the staff that we have. But in the future, if we don't have the same ethics and staff with the same moral foundations, it could create a problem. And that's just part of the experiment that the legislature is embarking on. So again, in my great and utmost respect for the legislature, I do believe that from a policymaking perspective, it lacks some depth because of the lack of oversight that it will create. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none. I move to adjourn. Let's do it. Seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. The next board meeting on the schedule is scheduled for March 29, 2016. Thank you.
Yeah.